Amen. Turn to chapter 8, Revelation 8, and we'll read the last verse of chapter 8 and open chapter 9 and jump right into our study. Revelation 8 and verse number 13. And then I'm going to read a few verses of chapter 9. I won't read all of them that we're going to cover today. So, verse 13 of chapter 8, I looked and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. So there's this warning that it's even going to amp up even more, basically. Then, verse 1, chapter 9, the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit, and he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. And out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days, men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them. The shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold. Their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running to battle. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon. We'll stop there. We'll read the rest of that chapter later on this morning. So let me give you just this quick little summary if you can see it. If not, I'll read what's up there. Um, and I'm kind of bringing together now a little bit more of my understanding of how this plays out. You may not see it just this way, but again, that's fine. Instead of 21 straight judgments, I see these judgments kind of lumped together. The first four seals, remember, and the way that we've interpreted them is those four seals represent things that have always gone on. The cycle of evil, man trying to rule himself, bloodshed, famine, death. That's always going on. The fifth seal then is the souls that have been martyred under the altar, saying, God, how much longer before you bring this to an end? I see that fifth seal even happening it could have happened pre-tribulation. To be honest, I think this seal's ongoing. I don't think it only happened once. I can imagine souls under the altar always saying, God, how much longer? So I don't get locked into a time frame there. The sixth seal is when we saw the thunder, the lightning. We saw people hiding under mountains and rocks saying, the wrath of the Lamb has come, save us from this. That sixth seal, to me, is the beginning of the last part of the tribulation, which is really 3.5 years. Let me put a couple of other things. You will read in Revelation 3.5 years. You will read 1,262 days. You will read 42 months. And all three of those are 3.5 years. Um, the 7 year tribulation that we talk about never is mentioned in Revelation. It's not mentioned. We get the 7 years from the 70th week of Daniel, and so we kind of extrapolate that into Revelation. It's very likely it's that way. But 3.5 years, which would be the second half of the 7 years, is what's really going to be bad on the earth. Okay, that's when the judgment of God is really poured out. So we're kind of now just laser focusing on the last 3.5 years. So I believe that sixth and seventh seal, all seven trumpets and all seven bowls are kind of squeezed into that 3.5 years. And I would even suggest the sevens all kind of happen right at the end of that 3.5 years. So we're kind of narrowing the time frame. We're now talking about this period of time when God is just unleashing his judgment. It's the last thing before he returns to set up his kingdom. All right. We're not going to try to figure out how many weeks everything is, or how many months, or how many days, or the order. That's not the point. The point is this is squeezed in to that end. It's kind of like the last scene before God comes to set, or Christ comes to set up his kingdom. Now, so we've already talked about the first four trumpets. This is not in your notes, but I'm just going to give them to you, review them real quickly. Trumpet one was hail, fire, and blood that fell from heaven. um, Trumpet two was something that fell out of the sky, possibly a meteor or meteorite, that caused the water to turn to blood. And keep in mind, we talked all the way through this that these are similar plagues to what happened in the book of Exodus. And let me just go ahead and plant this again in your head, because I think I mentioned it at the end last week, and I've mentioned it a couple of times. But there is a real parallel between what is happening in Revelation, what happened in Exodus. God is bringing his people out of bondage into the land of promise. And the end of the age, when Christ returns, God is bringing his people out of bondage into the heavenly land of promise. So when we see those parallels, that's for a reason, because the Bible is one book. It's not 66 separate books, it's a story. And so that parallel should not surprise us. So the water turned to blood. Whatever fell out of the sky, meteorite, whatever, turns the water to blood. The third one, there's also something that falls out of the sky. Again, a meteorite, an earthquake, possibly, volcano. We talked about that as a possibility, but it actually causes the water to become bitter. And again, this is a flip flop of what happened in the wilderness when the bitter waters became sweet. Now something falls in the water and the water becomes bitter. And then the fourth one, the fourth plague, is a third of the sun, a third of the stars, a third of the moon are dark. It's dark a third of the day. Uh, and that is a plague that also has kind of its genesis or its origin in the Exodus plagues as well, when darkness covered the earth. So again, darkness generally points to the judgment of God. When Jesus is on the cross, it becomes dark, and it's because God is judging sin in Jesus. He who knew no sin became sin. So darkness is a picture of the judgment of God. So we have looked at the first four trumpets. The last two, now you can go back to your notes right at the top. The last two trumpets now are different. The first four trumpets dismantled creation. The water um, turns to blood, um, hail, fire, blood, waters turn bitter, earth is dark. But these last two, five and six, trumpets five and six, which is our subject today, they are different. They deal more with a cosmic scope. And what you're going to see here is both trumpet five and trumpet six deal with the evil influence, the evil power of the demonic. All right. There's really nothing demonic going on in one through four. It's a meteorite, it's a volcano, it's an earthquake, it's the water turning blood, it's darkness. Five and six are certainly demonic in nature, and you'll see that as we go. Notice also that these last two trumpets do not come straight from the hand of God. God instead is releasing the evil powers to wreak their havoc. So, like with the meteorite, God's sending that, turning the water to blood. With the darkness, this is the hand of God at work. But in 5 and 6, it's God releasing the demonic to do its own work. God's not causing the work, He is releasing the demonic to do that work. Again, that underscores the self destructive force of evil as evil actually turns on itself. We just pause. That's what people don't even understand today. Um, Demonic influence, and it's there, it's here. Demonic influence that lures not just young people, we tend to use them as examples, but lures young people into that which is thrilling and exciting. The demonic, satanic influence is not concerned with people enjoying life, it's concerned with destroying life. And so it comes as an angel of light. It looks good. That looks fun. That looks like that'll be beneficial to me. But that the intention, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and to destroy. The thief does not come to make your life better, even though he says it's going to make your life better. So demonic influence now is we see it now like everything stripped away, and what it really does is it actually turns on itself. All right, we'll see that as we go through the narrative today. So the false gods that that people now and then will be worshiping, the false gods of money and pleasure and sex and all of these things, the false gods they've been worshiping are not friendly, they're destructive. I mean, think about this. Even the love of or the worship of money is the root of all evil. Money is not evil, but when we worship it, it's the root of all evil. It destroys. And so again, we're seeing now it's like all of the covers are pulled back and we see what evil really will do, and that is it turns on itself to destroy. Now, this little note before we jump right in. This is it has always been through Revelation, but now it really picks up. Apocalyptic imagery now goes to like a whole new level. Okay, now we're really getting into the color of the breastplate and the women's hair and teeth like that. So we're getting now the full apocalyptic genre here. And so I'm not going to, there are classes that try to define every little piece, but again, we'd be here forever. And I don't think that's the point. So we're going to look at general principles here, not try to define every little piece because there's, in my mind, no real purpose for that. We need to get the picture of what is going on. So we begin with 8:13 as we move into the fifth trumpet, and there is. Let me just read 8:13 again to you. Um, Chapter 8, verse 13. And I looked and I heard an angel flying through the midst of the heavens, saying with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound." So, what John now sees is this bird, a vulture or an eagle, likely an eagle, which would have been the symbol of Rome. Eagles were known for their strength and their size. And in most cultures of the ancient world, eagles were also seen as messengers of God, of the gods. So he sees this bird, this eagle. Um, I heard an angel flying through the midst of the heaven, and this eagle, this flying being, has, and notice in the midst of the heaven means that this message is now universal and it has a message. Now, I want to point out something. In chapter 14, we're not there yet, and in verse 4, there will be a mid-air message of the eternal gospel. There will be a proclamation of the eternal gospel. In fact, you can just flip there, chapter 14, verse 4. It'll help me make the point. Chapter 14, verse 4. Um, Except I wrote the wrong verse down, so it's not going to help us at all. So just forget that. But it is in there. There is a mid-air message of the eternal gospel. And in chapter 19:17, birds are invited to the great supper of God, which is, you don't have to understand this now, but it's a judgment scene. Okay, so here's what I want you to see. On one end, there's a midair message with the bird of the eternal gospel. On the other end, they are invited to the great supper of God, which is a judgment scene because there's all this flesh and they're vultures and they're eating it. So that's judgment. This is the eternal gospel. In the middle, which is the one we are looking at today, is this message: woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. In other words, earth, get ready. There's a choice to be made. The time is running out. You either are going to accept the gospel that was proclaimed midair, or you're going to reject the gospel and you're going to be part of the judgment scene at the end. So, this is like that middle piece saying, now the time has come. God is unleashing his judgment, and now is the time. Humanity must choose between the gospel and judgment. Let me just say that again. Humanity must choose between the gospel and judgment. And that is not just for the last 3.5 years of the world as we know it. That is today. All right. We have to choose. I was just talking to someone before and saying we are, the gray area is just kind of sucking up. It's almost gone. It's either full in or full out, and that's what's happening. That's what ought to happen, and we're going to see it at its heightened level at the end of time. Notice the threefold woe, 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 which is reminiscent of holy, 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 and it's God's holiness because He is holy that demands that evil be judged. That's the reason God has to judge evil, is because God is inherently holy. He cannot let sin continue. So this woe is to the inhabitants of the earth. Remember, the earth dwellers. These are those who have rejected Christ. Therefore, they are subjects of his wrath because they've rejected him. So woe to the inhabitants of the earth. Let me paraphrase verse 13. You think the first four trumpets were bad, the last three are going to be even worse. So, whoa, whoa, whoa. Get ready, because the first four have passed, but the last three are going to come, and they are going to be vicious. All right. The sealed, let's remember, the sealed that got sealed in chapter 7 are going to be protected. You see that again in the text that we'll be looking at. And that sealed, again, the question is that all of the church that's left, or is that just Israel? We don't have to decide that, but whoever it is that's still on the earth that are people of God will be sealed and protected from that, from trumpet 5 and trumpet 6. Now, chapter 9, verse 1. So we have this announcement that things are getting worse, that judgment is all out now, it's being unleashed. And again, I would suggest we're in the back 3.5 years here, and this is when all of this is happening. Chapter 9, verse 1: the fifth angel sounds, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. We're just going to stop with verse 1 for a minute or two. So um, the trumpet sounds, and giving you a little foresight, the trumpet that sounds is going to be telling of an invasion on the earth of supernatural demonic locusts that will emerge out of the bottomless pit or hell and will torture earth dwellers for 5 months. These demons will turn on their own people, but God will still be seen as in charge because they will not be able to touch the sealed. Again, Israel or all of the church, we're not certain. We all have opinions, but whoever sealed will be protected from this. So, who is this angel? This is a great text to kind of think through some things. The fifth angel sounds, and I saw a star fallen from heaven. Now, let me just stop there. Why am I saying who is this angel? Because stars in Revelation are angels. Remember, the stars to the seven churches. All right. Stars are the angels of the churches. So, star is coming out of heaven. Now, here is where this is where there are divergent opinions. All right. I'll share with you mine. You can choose whichever one you want. The text says, I saw a star fallen. All right. That immediately sounds like a fallen angel. That makes sense. Flip back to Isaiah 14, if you would. Isaiah 14, and look at verse number 12. Isaiah 14, verse 12. This is about the fall of Lucifer, who was an angel. 14:12, Isaiah, how are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you've said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. So we kind of get that picture. You can go back now to Revelation. We get that picture of fallen angel, fallen Lucifer, and it even is strengthened by the idea that this is a fallen angel is strengthened by the fact that the angel, he is the angel of the abyss. The Greek word is abuso, the bottomless pit. Gordon Fee, who is the Assemblies of God scholar that just passed, he thinks this is a fallen angel, one that fell with Satan. Um, Craig Keener, says it could be a fallen angel, but he thinks it is a good angel, and this is describing his descent from heaven, not his fallenness. Now, let me explain why I think that's actually a good call. Because the word fallen in the Greek, and I put it in your notes, is the Greek word pipto, and it is the word that simply means descend. All right. So when we think fallen, we think sinful angel that fell. But when we look at the Greek word pipto, it means descended. So the fact that God would dispatch an angel who would have to descend to go to the bottomless pit does not necessarily signify that's a fallen evil angel. It could just as easily be, and I would argue it is, a dispatched angel of God that descends to the bottomless pit and holds the key to the bottomless pit. Let me explain, at least from my perspective, why I think it is that and not a fallen angel. It's probably a good angel because nowhere else in Revelation, with the possible exception of chapter 17, does God use an evil angel to execute his will. All right. That's one thing. Um, Osborne points out, and I think this is a great point, he does not think God would entrust a demon with the key to the abyss. Um, and again argues that verse 1 can be understood as descending. If you look, flip over to Revelation 20 and verse 1. Revelation 20 and verse 1. I saw an angel coming down from heaven having the key to the bottomless pit. Notice that, coming down, and he thinks it's the same angel, and this is a heavenly good angel merely descending, not fallen. Make sense to everybody? All right. That's where I stand. Again, it doesn't change the interpretation, at least not in any meaningful way. But I think that this is, I don't think God would entrust a demon to hold the key to the pit that holds the demons in. All right. So I think this is God saying, I'm going to release it. And he sends an angel from heaven. He descends, not fallen. He descends, pipto, and then releases these angels. Osborne also thinks that the period between 9:1 and 21 is the period that Satan has his last chance to work, and again corresponds with 3.5 years or the 42 months or the 1260 days of tribulation. So these angels are being released to really go at it. Give them one more opportunity. Satan to work on the earth. And notice also, let me show you one other verse, um, or same verse, chapter 9 and verse 1. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. Again, that signifies a good angel that God has given authority to. I'm giving you the key so that you can go and release it. Does that make sense to everybody? At least the interpretation, whether you agree or not. That's it. It's I yes, Lonnie. That's a great question. He Jesus said he had the keys to death, hell, and the grave. It might be one of those three. I would argue maybe hell. They are Hebrew, and Hebrew words, Greek words get interchanged there, but Jesus seemed to indicate, again, it's authority, and this is imagery. Whether there's a literal key or not, it's the authority, and Jesus has the authority over death, hell, and the grave, which again makes it difficult for me to believe that a demonic spirit has the authority over something Jesus said he had the authority over. So to him is given. So in other words, I've got the authority, and I'm going to let you go and use it. All right. So so he has the authority to open the bottomless pit. Let's talk about what comes out of the bottomless pit. Nothing good ever comes out of the bottomless pit. How about that? Um, all right, verse 2. And he opened the bottomless pit. Smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Just a couple of things here. I just want you to see the imagery. Again, smoke um, reminds us of Mount Sinai. This parallel just gets strengthened all the way through. Um, in Psalm 18:8, smoke comes from the nostrils of God. It's His divine wrath. There's a really I don't remember the Hebrew word. I took Hebrew, but that was a few years ago, and I've thought about other things since. All right, but the actual Hebrew word for anger, it's really interesting. I can't remember it, but it actually means the ringing of the nose. And here's the reason: a lot of Hebrew words are um, like pictures. And if you take your nose, or preferably someone else's, and you ring it, um, think about blood comes, but also the redness of your face, which would be a picture of anger. When somebody gets really mad and angry, their face gets red. That's really what the Hebrew word means for anger and wrath. It's the wringing of the nose. So it's often that smoke coming out of the nostrils of God speaks of his anger. This is judgment coming. All right. Just a little word picture to kind of give you some sense. Also, smoke depicted the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis 19:28. Smoke depicts the day of the Lord in Joel 2:30. So that smoke that comes out of the bottomless pit, this is an act of God clearly that's about to happen, and a sign of wrath to come. It is so thick that it darkens the sky. Remember in chapter 8 and verse 12, third of the earth is darkened. I'm not saying that the two are together. They could be, but there's this darkness is so thick that it darkens the sky. Let's look at verse 3. So now there's this smoke that comes out, and out of the smoke, locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power, and they're commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, excuse me, but to torment them for 5 months. Torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days, men will seek death and not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from him. So the locusts, that recalls the second plague in Exodus, right? So again, see that parallel. Locusts, by the way, are frequent. They show up frequently in the Old Testament as a sign of judgment. Once you flip back to Deuteronomy 28, have you flip back? I hope I wrote the right one down this time. All right, Deuteronomy 28 and 28:38 and Yes, just look at 28:42. Locusts shall consume all your trees and the produce of your land. This is if you do not follow the Lord your God. So locusts are seen as a symbol of the judgment of God. They are also, locusts are the prelude to the day of the Lord in Joel chapter 1 and 2, Joel 1, 1 through 4, and then verses 11 through 15 in chapter 2, 1 through 3. So the locusts emerge, and these locusts are symbols of the wrath of God. Those little verses on the bottom of your page actually should be on the bottom of the next page. So just skip past those. Um, on the top of page 3, this judgment is beyond the Old Testament judgment because in the Old Testament, locusts harm the vegetation. All right. Remember when God says in Joel, I will restore um, the days that the locusts have, I will restore the days that the locusts have destroyed. Um, and that was in reference to the vegetation. Never in the Old Testament do locusts harm individuals, they only destroy the vegetation. But here in Revelation, last 3.5 years, these demonic locusts are not allowed to touch the vegetation. They're touching humanity. So this is a ramped up version of the judgment of God. These are not ordinary locusts, they are demonic. Where do they come from? They come from the abyss, bottomless pit. These are not just locusts that we see. These are demonic locusts. Keener um, leans this way, sees them as an invading army, demonic influence. They are tormenting in such a way the pain that a scorpion would inflict. But notice they're only inflicting the unsealed, all right? The sealed are still here. Again, whether that is just Israel or whether that's all believers, they're not going to be touched by these stinging scorpion like demonic locusts. But while they sting humanity, they cannot take their lives. Death is not found. All that is found is torturous pain. Um, they're given power, which is exousia in the Greek, or authority. So again, the fact that they're given the power, that authority, all authority, Jesus said, is I've been given all authority. So he's given this authority now for these demonic locusts to sting. Just again, a picture that Satan is only able to do what Satan is allowed to do. It happened with Job. It happens at the end of time. Given authority to sting, and they will do this for 5 months. People will long, or even the word is stronger than that. They will lust to die. The pain will be so awful that they will scream and cry out to die, but they will be unable to find death. All right, can you imagine the pain that will be suffered? 5 months kind of parallels the lifespan of locusts. It's also the period between the early and the latter rain, which is April to August. This is just a prelude to eternal judgment. Eternal judgment is eternal, and people will in hell want to die but be unable to die. This is only 5 months. 5 months compared to eternity. Again, if we never get the symbols just right, this ought to stir us to tell people that don't know Jesus about Jesus, because hell is real, and it's not just 5 months, it's eternal. Does that make sense to everybody? That's to me the biggest takeaway. That's why I don't want to get caught up in too much trying to figure every little detail out, and then we get off course, and we just have our little dialogues, but we never get out and reach the world. So this is horrible pain. Um, these people being judged are the ones who have taken the lives of the martyrs. Now they are experiencing retribution, only they can't get out of it. They can't. It's just pain, but no freedom to die. Then in verses 7 through 10, the locusts are more clearly described. Shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle, and they have on their heads crowns, something like gold. Again, something like gold. That just John is not trying to pick all the details. He's seeing this vision and it's something like gold. Well, that just tells us we're just supposed to get a picture. We don't have to define every little piece. Something like gold. Um, and their faces are like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair. Their teeth are like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron. The sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. And they had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. But their power, their authority, exousia, was to hurt men for 5 months. Again, this is apocalyptic language because John is now combining the locusts and the scorpions with horsemen and this military of invading army. So this is a demonic invading army of stinging like scorpion, demonic locusts. The demons are warring against their own, those who are evil, but they're wearing this crown. And the word crown is Stephanos, which is a victor's crown. But notice this is only pretentious because they only ruling for 5 months. They think they're in charge, but they're only ruling for 5 months. So this is a pretentious crown. Notice the human similarity in verse 8, hair like women's hair. And that points to their pretentiousness of their desire to replace humanity, and this is Osborne, as the apex of God's creation. They want to take over. They want to run humanity away. They want to destroy humanity. They have teeth like lions. What did the Bible say about Satan? He's like a lion roaming about seeking whom he may devour. So you've got them looking like humans, but then they have teeth like lions, symbolic of Satan's desire to destroy. They have breastplates similar to the look of locusts. Um, breastplates, and the Parthians, by the way, of that day actually put breastplates on their horses. So, and it points to the invincibility of this demonic force. This is a force that cannot be stopped until God says you don't have authority to do it any longer, right? They are invincible. The sound, it says in verse 9, the sound of their wings is like the chariots. So the sound of the wings is kind of the swarm, and their stingers they have in verse 10 because they aim to harm. And those who refuse to turn to God will experience the judgment of God in the form of the very gods they have served, turning on them. All right, because what's behind the idols, whether it's money, whether it's sex, whether it's pleasure, whatever the idol is, what's behind it is demonic. But now the idol is stripped back and you see the influence because we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, all right, but against principalities now. And this, it's like the curtain is pulled back and you see the demonic behind it, and they are coming to destroy the very people who have given themselves over to the demonic, even though they didn't know it was demonic. All right, but it's when it's not God, when it's not Jesus is Lord, then there is another influence behind it. All right. Verse 11. This is an interesting verse, also loaded with different interpretations. I'll give you mine. And I actually self challenged mine this week and tweaked mine a little bit, but still landed on my side of mine. How about that? All right. Verse 11. They had a king. Uh, they had as a king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. Now, some people think, and I they may be right. Some people interpret the angel of the bottomless pit as the same one who has the key of the bottomless pit. I think differently. I think the key belongs to God and he gives authority to the one that opens the pit. But I think in the pit, all right, I mean, this is a bad example, but in any really awful prison, um, they're all prisoners, but there's usually one that emerges that that's the real, if you don't, he'll take care of you as long as you take care of him. So I think this is the kind of picture we have. I don't think this is the one that opens it. He's just the king of the ones that are in it. All right. So the king of the bottomless pit, um, Osborne thinks this is Satan himself. I'm not certain I would concur, but it's possible. And he points out the definite article in verse 11. They had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. So again, he sees the definite article, but I think that doesn't mean it's Satan. It just means there is a definite king. So I don't find that as super compelling that it's Satan. But notice this in verse 11 that they have their name in Hebrew is Abaddon, all right? But in the Greek, he has the name Apollyon. All right, now this is really interesting. Abaddon in the Hebrew and Apollyon in the Greek both mean destroyer. All right. Now, um, let me make a couple of comments here. In the fifth and sixth trumpets, a third of the earth dwellers are destroyed. Now, destroyer is an Old Testament synonym for Hades. All right. I want you to look at, flip back in your Bibles to Job 26:6. Job 26:6. Sheol is naked before him, and destruction, if you look that up in the Hebrew, um, you will find the word Abaddon has no covering. So here, Abaddon has a, it's the word I'm looking for, a synonym is a synonym for Hades or Sheol, destruction. Abaddon has no covering. If you will flip over to Psalm 88, Psalm 88 and verse 11. Psalm 88 and verse 11. Um, Shall your loving kindness be declared in the grave, or your faithfulness in the place of Abaddon, destruction? All right. So it means destruction or destroyer. And then if you will go ahead and flip the page in your notes now, to the top of page 4, Proverbs 15:11 says, "Hell and Abaddon, destruction, are before the Lord. So how much more the hearts of the sons of men." So again, Abaddon, that's those are all Hebrew because they're all Old Testament. Is the same as destroyer. So the king of the bottomless pit has as his name Abaddon, which means destruction or destroyer. Now, so the king in the notes is named for the place he rules. Rules the place of Abaddon, destruction, where people are destroyed or where ultimately people will be destroyed. Now, there is a connection that some have made, somewhat tenuous, um, between Exodus 12. Remember when some people call it the death angel, but the Bible does not say that. But when the blood was placed over the door And it actually says the destroyer went into the Egyptian homes and took the firstborn. Also in 2 Samuel 24, remember when David made a census and he wasn't supposed to, and the destroyer, it's the word destroyer, went out and killed tens of thousands of lives because of David's sin. So some make that connection, and it may very well be because it's translated destroyer. However, the Hebrew word is different. And I put it in your notes. The Hebrew word is shaheh, and it looks like Sahat, but it's pronounced shaheh. And so that it is translated destroyer, but it's not the word Abaddon. Doesn't mean it's not, but again, it's splitting hairs. It doesn't really matter, but there is that connection as well. So the king of the bottomless pit has as his name Abaddon in the Hebrew, Apollyon in the Greek, both mean destroyer or destruction, and they are named for the place that they control. All right, that's the takeaway. Everybody got that so far? All right, now go back to Revelation then. So that is the fifth trumpet, is these demonic locusts that will sting for 42 months. All right, then in verse 13, um, the sixth angel sounds, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the four angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind. And the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million, and I heard the number of them. So now, by the time we get to the sixth trumpet, the torture is over of the fifth, and the sixth trumpet will lead to a third of humanity. Now, remember, under the fifth trumpet, they couldn't die. They lusted to die, but they couldn't. But now, in the sixth trumpet, um, there will be death of one third of humanity. This resembles the fifth trumpet with the release of angels, the description of torture, and the conclusion of the matter. In verse 12, I didn't read verse 12, but verse 12, it's the interlude between the fifth and sixth trumpet. One woe is past, still two more are coming. And so then we see the sixth angel released. Judgment is coming. So the four angels are released. Some think that the voice, um, I heard a voice, look at that in verse 13. I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Um, some think that this is the voice of the martyrs who are under the altar crying, how long? Only problem with that is this is a singular voice, it's not a plural voice. So I don't think it necessarily fits. It's likely the angel that heard the prayers of the martyrs and delivered their prayers to God. That would be my speculation. Again, these things are not, they don't matter. I just want you to get a basic picture of what's going on. So there's a voice heard from the four horns of the altar. So from the altar area before God, and this voice says to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So you have an angel at the altar that is saying to the angel who holds the sixth trumpet to release the four angels that are at the river Euphrates. This is the first time, by the way, that the angel announces judgment, or first time that the angel that announces judgment participates. But here, or the first time the angel that announces judgment participates, but here he doesn't participate. He just releases the angels that are bound at the river Euphrates that will actually bring the judgment. These bound angels, again, are clearly demonic, bound at Euphrates, which is would have been the eastern border of the Roman Empire. And this, what comes, is a symbol of invasion because this river, invading forces, often crossed this river Euphrates in the Old Testament to attack Israel. So The fact that they're coming from the river Euphrates in the Old Testament, they would cross that river to judge or to attack Israel. So now they're crossing to attack again. So it's clearly a picture of judgment. The river Euphrates, by the way, will be dried up in chapter 16 to make the way for the kings of the east to come. So the martyrs have asked, how long? And notice, I want you to see this. In verse 15, the four angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year. I know that seems insignificant, but the martyrs have said, how long? And God said, you have to wait a little while, but God had a time in mind. This is the day, the week, the month, the year. This is the time. And they are released for God's timing. They're prepared for this very hour. God, again, is in control. That's what I want you to see. God will be in control of the judgment that will come. Their purpose is to kill a third of humankind. Now, remember back in chapter 7 and verse 3, they are restrained until the people of God are sealed. Now they are unrestrained and they will kill a third of the earth. You know how many that would be today? That would be more than 2 billion people. Talking a lot of people. All right. They will be given power. These demonic horsemen, uh, judgment and warning is coming because there will still be an opportunity to repent. And then these four angels are transformed into a uh, 200 million army of demonic horsemen. Verse 16, John said, I heard the number of them. Vast demonic army. The demonic locust could only inflict pain. The demonic horsemen will now destroy a third of the earth. Now that cavalry, is now described in verse 17. And thus I saw horses in the vision. Those who sat on them had breastplates of fiery red, hyacinth blue, sulfur yellow, and the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. By these three plagues, a third of mankind was killed by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone which came out of their mouths. Their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails are like serpents having heads, and with them they do harm. So, like the locusts, they are described as war horses. We're on the top of page 5. They are demonic. They bring torment, but they also bring destruction. Notice the locusts have teeth like lions. The horses have heads like lions. Again, Satan is a roaming lion, seeking whom he may devour. He comes to steal, kill, and to destroy. It's just more fierce. Locusts had teeth, but now we have heads. This is more fierce. Fire, smoke, brimstone, again, symbolizing, as always, God's judgment, breathed out of these horsemen, breathed out by the demonic horses, and that'll be the atmosphere of eternal judgment. They have tails like snakes, again, satanic picture, demonic. The really sad thing is, verse 20, the rest of mankind who were not killed did not repent of their works, of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols of gold, silver, brass, stone, and wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders or their sorceries or their sexual immorality or their thefts. Let me, I don't want to make too much out of this. Um, let me read the notes first and then make a comment. So this concludes the seals and the trumpet judgments, with the exception of the seventh trumpet, which is an announcement that the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. All the plagues prove the power and sovereignty of God because he's in control. He gives authority to open up the bottomless pit. He gives authority to sting for 42 months or for 5 months. So all of this is proving sovereignty of God and the futility of those idols, those demons. They're not in charge. They're given power, and then when they're done, they have to stop. So it shows the sovereignty of God. Evil, demonic, and false gods hate those that follow them. I'm going to make this point one more time. I probably ought to make it in a Sunday morning sermon, because those things that become our idols do not love us. They're bent on destruction. You know, I am convinced that, um, this is such a silly illustration. I think I mentioned it last week, but just I don't watch. I like sports, by the way, but I don't watch NBA basketball. That's kind of like professional wrestling to me. But anyway, um, I don't have any idea how much money. It's millions of dollars. They pay players, pay our school teachers 43,000 dollars, and pay basketball players who whine and complain all the time millions and millions of dollars. I mean, they still make a whole lot more money than me. The coaches, a lot more money than me. But I don't know if what I did. I was in the Planet Fitness locker room, and they have a TV up there, and Doc Rivers, was a great basketball player and has been a coach several places. I have no idea what he did. But he was the coach of Philadelphia 76ers, and he's had three like really good years in a row, really good year in a row. And like 42 and no, like 62 and 28 record or something like that. Made the playoffs and got to the semifinals every year, but 3 years in a row he's lost in the semifinals. And he's probably making a tenth of what his guys are making. And I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, if I had to preach a good sermon every week or get fired, I'd been fired a long time ago, you know. But he's got to have 3 years in a row where he's at the top of his conference and and makes the playoffs and makes a couple of steps into the playoffs and then loses and doesn't win at all. And so they just get rid of him. And he didn't shoot a basket. I mean, it's those sorry guys making 40 or $50 million that were shooting and missing the baskets, but they can Doc Rivers. And again, that's just the world we live in. But if professional sports has not become an idol in this nation, I don't know what is. You understand when the book of Revelation was written, if they'd have said professional sports, nobody would have understood it. All right. So they say idols of gold and silver and brass. And okay, so nobody's bowing down in America before an idol of silver or brass. But I'm telling you, we're bowing down to other idols, money, stock market, sports. I'm not saying you're bowing down if you watch the game. That please don't turn this into legalism. I'm just saying we worship that stuff. And that stuff is not because it wants to make that stuff's not even, again, it's the love of it that's inspired by the demonic. All right. Not saying that every NBA player is, please don't do that to me. All right. But what's behind that influence that sucks us in, that makes us make church and the people of God second or third or fourth or 10th priority, and sports that trickles down to our children. I'm just saying what's behind that is principalities and powers that want to suck us in to something being Lord other than Jesus. And right now we see the good stuff, but when it's stripped back, we'll find out it wasn't all that good. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's really an important preaching point of Revelation. So idolatry is still a problem today. Whatever we place before God as an idol, money, possessions, power, sex, fame, pleasure, alcohol, drugs, anything is an idol. These things, while maybe not all bad in themselves, do seek to gain power. They want to control and rule us. And idols ultimately give way to sin. There's a warning to weak Christians in Revelation 21:8, but the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts and idolaters and all liars, they will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur. Why is cowardly mentioned first? Because cowardly do not stand up to that. Cowardly compromise and they give in. And James says sin begins when it's just birth, and then lust conceives, and then lust gives way to sin, and sin, when it's finished, brings forth death. The cowardly just step over that line and over that line, and they're sucked in. And so it's the cowardly that ultimately leads us, or cowardice that leads us into those other sins. So let me conclude. We live in a sin sick world. There is the sadness of a demonic world under the control of the king of the abyss that seeks to destroy all who will follow. Humanity is so ensnared. This is at the end of time, but we see that already happening. So ensnared that it refuses to see and turn from their godlessness to the one who offers eternal life. God is sovereign and will one day turn it all around. To the first century believer and to every generation, God will protect his own when he pours out his wrath on their perpetrators. This is not yet the end here in Revelation. There's sealing and protection. It's understood in the light of the plagues of Egypt. Remember, they had blood over the door, so they're protected. God protected them. He protected them before he brought them out. Again, that applies maybe just to Israel, maybe it applies to all of us, but God protected them before he brought them out. Let me just end with this quote and then I'll be done. You may have questions. Keener says some interpreters may be troubled by this way of approaching biblical prophecy. Surely, if John envisions a devastating Parthian invasion that has not yet materialized, we should expect a literal revival of Parthians so they can invade again, the way some expect a revived Roman Empire. Some people think, okay, it's going to be the Parthians again or the Roman Empire. Keener is saying that's how some people see it. But if the point of John's vision is sought in the message it conveys, that's what I think we should do. Rather than in the details of the image, it may simply warn that God will use the empire's fiercest enemies to judge it, wicked as they also may be. Persecuted Christians need fear no evil empire. Satan's kingdom is divided, and God uses one evil empire to destroy another while the church of Jesus Christ remains and grows. Jesus said, I'll build my church. We want to make sure we're in the people of God. All right, any questions or